Moving ahead, then, kids, we mentioned sun's energy coming in, thermal energy going out. We said the higher latitudes have a deficit in energy, so they are losing more energy than they are receiving, and the low latitudes have a surplus of energy, which means they are receiving more energy than they are losing to space, which means we are moving energy from low latitudes to high latitudes. And we mentioned this and said that brings us winds and ocean currents and so on. But there are more detailed processes. What is it? If you imagine sun shining on the ocean, on the lakes, etc., what does it do? It causes evaporation, right? Which means the water molecules, remember, they are held together by hydrogen bonds, and they get broken by the winds and the heating. So that water vapor that gets from the ocean and the lakes and the rivers and so on into the atmosphere, the air that is moist is lighter. That means it begins to rise into the atmosphere. As it rises, remember, the pressure is decreasing with height in the atmosphere. If you don't remember this, we'll revisit this at a later point in this series of podcasts. And a rising air, if it's going into lower pressure, it expands and it cools and it condenses the water vapor, forms clouds, and under certain conditions, when it saturates, it also begins to rain, and the clouds move, as you've seen, right? So this idea of rising air causes something called convection, which is what brings us rain. So if you're old enough to understand convection, it's fine. You can also think of it as a heater, let's say, that's sitting in the corner of the room. When it gets cold, you turn on the heater. So the air that is in touch with the heater gets warm and rises, hits the ceiling, and then goes to the other end of the room, and then the air is colder as it rises and expands and sinks and comes back. So you set up a circulation. There are figures in the podcast you can look at for what we mean by convection and so on. So these are the processes that are involved at a more detailed level in the energy balance, and that's how we create weather and climate as well. Okay, listen to the podcast and let me know if it makes sense, if you have any questions, etc. Okay.